Hello everyone, my name is James Gill. This is my project for the ESP program, Energy Sustainability and Policy in the College of Earth and Mineral Science at Penn State University. We were charged with coming up with a policy or action. In this case, I chose a bill, and then we followed it, and then we reported on that. So I have an evaluation, and we went through research, analysis, and recommendations. So this is my project on the 100% Renewable Energy Act, also known as Senate Bill 1849. For background, an act to transition Massachusetts to 100% renewable energy, also known as the 100% Renewable Energy Act, was petitioned by James B. Eldridge, Sean Gabrielli, Carmine L. Gentile, Jason M. Lewis, and other members of the General Court for legislation to transition Massachusetts to 100% renewable energy. The bill was originally introduced by Mr. Eldridge in early 2017. Looking at Massachusetts' energy profile, Massachusetts has a total energy production of 110 trillion BTUs, or roughly 0.1% share of the United States. Massachusetts utility scale net electricity generation is comprised of 66.5% natural gas, 20.7% nuclear, 0.2% petroleum, 0% coal, which is important that they have been able to get so low in coal that they've gotten it out completely, and 11.2% renewables, making them a leader in renewable energy usage. Going to Pennsylvania's energy profile, as of 2017, Pennsylvania has a total energy production of 7,461 trillion BTUs, or roughly 8.5% of the total US energy production. Pennsylvania's utility scale net electricity generation is comprised of 36.9% natural gas, 40.6% nuclear, 0.1% petroleum, 17.5% coal. Pennsylvania is a very heavy coal burning state, and 4.6% renewables. Pennsylvania's total energy consumption is 3,881 trillion BTUs, which ranks them 6th in the nation, but the Commonwealth's total energy or total consumption per capita is 303 million BTUs, which ranks them 27th in the nation. Looking at, so the way the bill is set up, the bill is comprised into 5 sections. The first section is pollution, emissions, and fossil fuels. In Massachusetts, concentrations of nitrogen dioxide and fine particulate matter had actually decreased across the state between 2003 and 2010, but the exposure had remained higher in predominantly Hispanic and non-Hispanic Black communities. So minority communities are disproportionately affected by pollution and climate change. The average annual concentration of PM 2.5 across the state had declined by 35% between 2003 and 2010, and the average annual NO2 concentrations declined by 24% between the years 2005 and 2010. So we see a lot of improvement. In 2008, the Global Warming Solutions Act was enacted, which requires Massachusetts to cut emissions by 25% statewide by the year 2020 as compared to 1990 levels. This act goes on to require that emissions be cut by 80% by the year 2050 as compared to 1990 levels. As of 2014, Massachusetts has reached an emissions level of 21% below the 1990 level. So Massachusetts is staying on track and meeting their goals. Pennsylvania, the rise of unconventional shale gas extraction using hydraulic fracturing has been met with a rise in claims of groundwater contamination. So people who are in those areas, their drinking water is being contaminated. The Department of Environmental Protection has reported that air pollutants in Pennsylvania's natural gas production sites has increased since 2013, so that's not good. We noticed an increase in pollutants. In 2014, shale gas emissions inventories include increases of 18% for nitrogen oxide, 25% for particulate matter, and 19% for carbon monoxide. All of these listed are involved in heart attacks, asthma, and difficulty breathing. And it is important to note that Pennsylvania does not cap greenhouse gas emissions, but the state does require that utilities meet a portion of their electricity demand with energy efficiency. Now, the next section, looking at energy security and renewable energy production. For Massachusetts, as of September 27, 2016, the Baker-Polito administration announced that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts was named the most energy efficient state in the nation by the American Council for the Energy Efficient Economy for the 6th year in a row. The Baker-Polito administration announced that the state's 2013 to 2015 3-year energy efficiency plan exceeded its savings goals and set a new savings record in 2015. And as of 2015, Massachusetts did not have proven crude oil or natural gas reserves, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. So like we said earlier, they had 0% coal, and they're sticking with it. Continuing on Massachusetts, states have been implementing funding and financial incentive programs in order to subsidize or basically increase investment in renewable energy resources such as wind, solar, and hydroelectric power. These programs include renewable portfolio standards, grants, rebate programs, tax incentives, loans, performance-based incentives, and more. More for Massachusetts. As of February 2017, Massachusetts was one of 30 states with a renewable portfolio standard, an RPS. The Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources adopted the RPS in 2002. In Massachusetts, the Massachusetts state legislature then expanded the standard in July of 2008 to include 2 sets of renewable energy standards for different energy sources, Class 1 sources or standards and Class 2 sources or standards. The Class 1 standard requires that all retail electric suppliers must procure at least 12% of their electric sales from eligible and new renewable energy facilities by the end of 2017. These eligible sources include solar, wind, wave, and tidal, landfill methane, biomass, geothermal, and hydroelectric power facilities. The Class 2 standard requires all retail electric suppliers to obtain at least 2% of their sales from eligible and existing renewable energy facilities by the end of 2015. More for Massachusetts. As of 2017, Massachusetts required all new residential and commercial buildings to meet energy efficiency standards. The Massachusetts Board of Building Regulations and Standards has authority to write the Massachusetts State Building Code, which is enforced by the municipalities. And in 2008, the Massachusetts State Legislature enacted legislation authorizing the board to adopt the most recent version of the International Energy Conservation Code, which outlines energy efficiency standards on heating, ventilating, air conditioning, water heating, and lighting for residential and commercial buildings. Looking at Pennsylvania, we're thinking coal. Pennsylvania adopted RPS in November of 2004, known as Pennsylvania's Alternative Energy Portfolio Standards Act, and AEPS. Pennsylvania is one of the only coal resource-dependent states that adopted a renewable energy policy. Although Pennsylvania is not the only coal-producing state with an RPS, it is the only state to include a fossil fuel in the form of waste coal. Pennsylvania receives roughly 4 to 4.6% of its net electricity generation from renewable energy sources. More on Pennsylvania. Until recently, PA's renewable electricity came primarily from hydroelectric and biomass plants, but now wind power has grown to roughly 2/5 of renewable energy generation, making it the state's #1 renewable energy source. Solar accounts for a substantially low percentage of Pennsylvania's net electricity generation at 1%, but that number is increasing. Investment in solar energy is considered an economic driver in that it can create construction jobs and manufacturing opportunities. The next section, we're looking to increase economic development, stimulate public and private investment. Just a quick background, green jobs and a clean economy are terms that have gained rhetorical prominence as federal and state governments have promoted strategies for increasing economic growth, adding to energy security and environmental stability. As of 2009, the idea of mutually beneficial environment-economy pairing came into the spotlight with the implementation of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And lastly, green jobs are considered good jobs with a median salary estimated to be 13% higher than conventional jobs. So there's money to be made. They're good jobs. Looking at Massachusetts, the state of Massachusetts is one of the most progressive U.S. states in advancing sustainability through energy conservation and renewable energy. As of 2008, the Green Communities Act was signed into law by Governor Deval Patrick, which awarded 110 communities with the title of Green Communities. The Green Communities Division provides grants, technical assistance, and local support for regional coordinators to help municipalities reduce energy use and costs by implementing clean energy projects in municipal buildings, facilities, and schools. More from Massachusetts. As early as 2002, Massachusetts was one of the first states to adopt electric utility restructuring legislation. Since Massachusetts is by the ocean, it has an opportunity for offshore wind projects. Public acquisition has often derailed most land-based wind power projects throughout the world, especially in the United States. In 2007, the first offshore wind project in North America was proposed for Nantucket Sound, Massachusetts. There was both a healthy number of supporters and opposers to the project. More from Massachusetts, the question came into how to address this opposition for the wind farms. And one method would be to invest in public relations to dispel myths and further convey the benefits of the project. And then another solution would be to invest in developing wind power further offshore and out of sight. This would require developing turbines in deeper water and running cables to them. Plus, it creates additional hazard exposure for the workers who operate the facility. In Pennsylvania, As of 2013, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection did not recommend the state's Climate Change Advisory Committee to vote on a plan that would consider increasing the state's renewable energy law, the Alternative Energy Portfolio Standard. In early 2013, the DEP introduced a plan to the CCAC that considered a modest increase in renewable energy from the existing 8% standard to a 10.5% standard, so a small increase. As of 2014, Governor Tom Corbett and the DEP announced that the Pennsylvania Energy Development Authority, in an independent public financing authority created in 1982, will offer an estimated $12.5 million in grants and loans for alternative and renewable energy projects. And then as of March of 2015, Governor Tom Wolf proposed $325 million in investments in Pennsylvania's energy sector. The governor proposed placing a 5% severance tax on natural gas extraction in Pennsylvania, which is the only state that doesn't currently have such a tax. Next section, looking at creating local jobs, improving energy performance, and deploying renewable energy. Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, Mass CEC, was created by the Green Jobs Act of 2008. It was formed with the purpose of accelerating the success of clean energy technologies, companies, and projects in the Commonwealth while creating high-quality jobs and long-term economic growth for the people of Massachusetts. In 2016, Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker signed a law that requires the state to solicit contracts for 1,200 megawatts of renewable energy, including hydropower, onshore wind, and solar power, as well as 1,600 megawatts of offshore wind energy. So again, Massachusetts has a big opportunity for offshore wind. In Pennsylvania, investing in renewable energy and efficiency will create jobs and help diversify Pennsylvania's economies. As of 2015, there were roughly 2,900 people employed in all parts of the solar value chain in the state. As of 2015, it was surveyed that there were 57,000 people employed in Pennsylvania's clean energy economy. Coal use is on the decline in Pennsylvania, and natural gas use is on the rise. Investing in green energy technologies is one method of diversifying local economies. This is critical for the coal communities that are facing job losses as the economy transitions to clean energy. The fifth section is to improve the quality of life for all residents. Just a quick background, the influence of climate change on human health varies from region to region, and it affects different people and different communities to different degrees. With climate change, the frequency, severity, duration, and location of weather and climate phenomena like rising temperatures, heavy rains and droughts, and some other kinds of severe weather are changing. A study that investigated the bidirectional long-run relationship for the period between 1990 to 2009 of energy consumption and the quality of life for 198 countries categorized by income level found that the increased energy consumption improved the quality of life of 70% of the countries involved despite their different income levels. Looking at Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs established an environmental justice policy in 2014 to help address the disproportionate share of environmental burdens experienced by low-income individuals and communities of color that often lack environmental assets in their neighborhood. Then the Urban Environment Program takes an active role in staying connected with the community, identifying projects, and providing resources to carry out those projects and make a measurable improvement on public health and increase the quality of the urban environment. For Pennsylvania, the Office of Environmental Justice, OEJ, has been established as a contact for residents in low-income areas as well as areas with high numbers of minorities. The OEJ's mission is to help the Department of Environmental Protection ensure the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people with the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental policies, regulations, as well as with respect to the identification of environmental issues that affect the most vulnerable communities. So now we're looking at, so there's renewable energy legislation in there's renewable energy legislation kind of going on in a lot of There's renewable energy legislation that's going on in a lot of states. So California's doing it, Massachusetts is doing it, Pennsylvania's thinking about doing it. So this next section is just to briefly go over the status of renewable energy legislation in the states of Massachusetts and Pennsylvania. In Massachusetts, currently activists are applying political pressure for the bill to be passed. On January 23rd, 2017, the 100% Renewable Energy Act was referred to the Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy. As it stands, there are currently 30 academics pushing strongly for the new initiative, which varies greatly from its predecessor, which aimed to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 25% of 1990 levels by 2020, and by 80% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Pennsylvania, this is actually a new advancement, but as of very recently, House Bill 2132 has been brought to light by Representative Chris Rabb, and the current status is that it has been referred to Environmental Resources and Energy on March 9th of 2018. So that's a developing bill. Next, we'll look at stakeholders. I was able to get a hold of about I was able to get a hold of about 8 to 10 stakeholders and gather some opinions and stances, and we'll be able to go over what they had to say. So my supporting stakeholders were CBAIN, Solar Energy Business Association of New England. I had Joan Fitzgerald, who is a professor at the School of Public Policy and Urban Affairs for UMass. Patrick Kinney, who worked for Beverly A. Brown Professor of Urban Health and Sustainability, Department of Environment and Health for Boston University School of Public Health. I spoke with Miriam Aylward, who is the Director of Operations for the Northeast Sustainability Energy Association, or NESIA. I talked to Ben Hellerstein, who is the State Director of Environmental Massachusetts. He was my main stakeholder. I spoke with Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. I spoke with Jenna Ide, who is the Director of Capital Projects and Municipal Operations for the Sustainability, Energy, and Resiliency Committee. And I talked to Pua Higginson, who is the Marketing Operations Coordinator for Mass Energy Consumers Alliance. So looking at CBAIN, CBAIN is a trade association with a size of roughly 60 committee members. Their mission is to protect and promote the New England solar industry through informed policy intervention, coalition building, and stakeholder education. Their source of funding is membership dues and sponsors. They're located in Amherst, Massachusetts. And their position on the 100% Renewable Energy Act is that they support it. As an association whose members derive their revenue from the solar industry, CBAIN would gain wealth from 100% renewable energy legislation if it were implemented. Looking at NESIA, NESIA is a larger organization, a membership organization, nonprofit with 11 staff and 2,500 members. NESIA advances the adoption of sustainable energy practices in the built environment by cultivating a community where practitioners share, collaborate, and learn. It's located in Greenfield, Massachusetts, and as far as 100% Renewable Energy Act, they support it, saying that 100% renewable energy legislation is in line with the vision of being climate neutral. Environment Massachusetts, so this was when I talked to Ben Hellerstein. They were my primary stakeholders. So they are a nonprofit, size of 60,000 members and supporters. Their mission is a citizen-based environmental advocacy project of Environment America. They believe there's something special about Massachusetts, something worth protecting and preserving for future generations. They are funded by membership dues and donations from supporters located in Boston. And in regards to the 100% Renewable Energy Act, they support it and said that they hope that promotion of reducing carbon emissions will help the environment and will allow Massachusetts to be a front runner in renewable energy. Speaking to Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, they are a state economic development agency with 67 members. Their mission or purpose is to grow the state's clean energy industry while helping the Commonwealth of Massachusetts meet its clean energy and climate goals. The source of funding is from the Renewable Energy Trust Fund, which was established by the Massachusetts legislature in 1998 as a part of the deregulation of the electric utility market. And in regards to the 100% Renewable Energy Act, they are support, and the members of this organization stand to gain funds if 100% renewable energy legislation were implemented. Looking at the Sustainability, Energy, and Resiliency Committee, it is a committee approved by City Council focused on energy efficiency. It's small with only 8 members. The mission or purpose is to promote the resilient environment and community. SERC focuses on practical applications that enhance the sustainability of the city's municipal operations, businesses, and residents. Source of funding is grant funding from the state located in Salem, Massachusetts. And in regards to the 100% Renewable Energy Act, they support it, saying that support of this bill is cohesive with Salem's clean energy resolution. Looking at Mass Energy Consumers Alliance, this is again another nonprofit with 15 members. Their mission or purpose is to make energy more affordable and environmentally sustainable. Source of funding is membership fees through their heating oil program, donations and grants. And in regards to 100% renewable energy legislation, they are in support, saying that a lot of their work revolves around renewable energy development. Through their green power program, they want to encourage people to go green. Financially speaking, they do not gain anything as a nonprofit organization. My opposing stakeholders were Mr. Michael Ferrante, who is the president of the Massachusetts Energy Marketers Association, Mr. Steve Dodge, who's the executive director of API's Massachusetts Petroleum Council, and Pat Garrity, who is counsel for NEPOOL, the New England Power Pool. So MEMA is a business trade association representing the heating oil sector with the size of 350 companies across the state. Their mission or purpose is implementing effective legislative, regulatory, and government affairs programs and activities in Massachusetts and Washington, D.C., promoting and protecting the business interests of members by developing and implementing effective advertising, marketing, and public relations programs, and serving as valuable resource and information base to host audience. They're located in Burlington, Massachusetts, and when I spoke to them about 100% renewable energy legislation, they said that they oppose it, saying that we do not feel that renewable sources can supply all energy needs. It's very hard to meet the entire energy demand, and that MEMA would lose money if it would put companies out of business. Looking at Steve Dodge and API's Massachusetts Petroleum Council, it is a trade standards association with 300 employees. The mission or purpose is to promote safety across industry globally and to influence public policy to support a strong, viable U.S. oil and natural gas industry. It is funded by member companies, or on the technical side, they charge for their services. When I spoke to them about 100% renewable energy legislation, they opposed. And Mr. Dodge is quoted saying that it is a totally unworkable aspirational legislation that could end up being very costly to ratepayers and energy users in the state. Consumers are already paying the highest energy prices in the country. This bill would increase prices even further. It could jeopardize the reliability of the region's grid, and that MPC would lose money, but that's not the sole reason for its opposition. NEPOOL is a voluntary association or a trade association with 474 members. Their mission is to create and sustain open, non-discriminatory, competitive, unbundled markets for energy, capacity, and ancillary services that are economically efficient and balanced between buyers and sellers, and provide an opportunity for a participant to receive compensation through the market for a service it provides in a manner consistent with proper standards of reliability and the long-term sustainability of competitive markets. When I spoke to them about 100% renewable energy legislation, they said that they oppose it, saying that individually there are some members who support renewable energy. The insertion of renewables into the wholesale market disrupt the marketplace. Renewables are subsidized by the state through tax credits. These subsidies are messing up the price setting mechanism. 100% renewables would impact the marketplace. This organization is opposed to anything that gets in the way of efficient markets, and 100% renewables are being pushed for public policy reasons that don't consider the market. Now onto my analysis portion. First, we looked at climate change. For Massachusetts, we've known that emissions from carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases caused by burning fossil fuels has measurable impacts on the global climate for decades. Many of these impacts predicted by scientists are already being witnessed. For Massachusetts, extreme storms have become 81% more frequent since the 1940s. The extreme downpours are not only more frequent, but they are also more intense, with the total amount of precipitation produced by the largest storm in each year at each station increasing by 10% over the period of the analysis. Massachusetts continued. Sea level rise and storm surge are other negative impacts of climate change. Sea levels could rise by more than 7 feet in Boston area by the end of the century, and residents could experience up to 90 days each year with temperatures greater than 90 degrees by 2070. They can expect longer drought periods, while extreme storms will become more severe, which can lead to potentially catastrophic flooding. Moreover, climate change can reach a critical point where warming occurs faster than originally anticipated, and thus emissions must be reduced as fast as possible by the states that have the ability to lead the way. Pennsylvania's climate is undoubtedly changing. The Commonwealth has warmed more than half a degree in the last century. Heavy rainstorms are more frequent. The tidal portion of the Delaware River is rising about 1 inch every 8 years. Rising temperatures and shifting rainfall patterns are likely to increase the intensity of floods and droughts in Pennsylvania. The average annual precipitation in Pennsylvania has increased 5 to 10% in the last century, and the precipitations from extremely heavy storms have increased 70% since 1958 in the Northeast. For more on Pennsylvania, the rising temperatures also invite invasive species to grow in places where it was originally too cold. Pennsylvania agriculture is likely to suffer with rising temperatures. Increased temperatures reduce corn yield, which is Pennsylvania's most important crop. Higher temperatures result in cows eating less and producing less milk, so an increasing temperatures could reduce the output of milk and beef, which together account for more than 1/3 of the Commonwealth's farm revenues. Looking at public health, for Massachusetts, influenza peaks during the wintertime in temperate for anywhere. Peaks during the wintertime in temperate regions such as the Northeast. A case crossover analysis of extreme precipitation events and influenza ER visits was conducted in Massachusetts in 2017 with interesting results. The study found that there is a positive association between extreme precipitation events and ER visits for influenza, particularly among African American populations. So we see that climate change is affecting minorities disproportionately. As the climate continues to change, extreme precipitation events are likely to increase in the Northeast, which could result in more cases of people contracting the flu. Additional research examining the basis of this association could potentially inform interventions for extreme precipitation events and the transmission of the flu. In Pennsylvania, as far as climate change or public health, certain people are particularly vulnerable to the negative impacts of climate change, including children, the elderly, the sick, and the poor. Higher temperatures can cause heat stroke, dehydration, and cause issues with individuals' cardiovascular systems and nervous systems. Higher temperatures cause an increase in ground level ozone, which is a key component of smog and contributes to respiratory illness. A particular area of concern for Pennsylvania is the population of ticks carrying Lyme disease. The ticks that transmit Lyme disease are active when temperatures are above 45 degrees Fahrenheit, so warmer temperatures and shorter winters account for a longer season where the ticks are active. Looking on now to economic development, for Massachusetts, renewable energy technologies have a multiplier effect by advancing the development of the energy sector while also supporting activities related to the industry. One of the main advantages of the utilization of renewable energy technologies is their sustainability. With an increased level of renewables, it is estimated that by 2030, wholesale market prices for energy will decrease by 0.5% and 8.1% relative to a future in which RPS policies in Massachusetts are not changed. In addition to reducing wholesale electricity prices, more renewable energy leads to more jobs. For Pennsylvania, as of July 2016, there were an estimated 66,000 clean energy jobs in Pennsylvania, up 15% from 2014. The majority of these jobs, roughly 80%, were in what the report called the energy efficiency sector. Most of the rest, roughly 8,800 jobs, were in renewable energy, which includes solar, wind, and hydroelectric manufacturing. Now, looking from Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, looking at the progress towards 100% renewables. In Massachusetts, in order to reach 100% renewable energy across all sectors in Massachusetts, the state must achieve 3 goals. They must reduce total energy consumption by taking advantage of every opportunity for energy efficiency. They must replace fossil fuel power plants with clean renewable energy, such as wind and solar, and they must electrify all energy used for transportation and building. In Pennsylvania, as of June 2016, Pennsylvania had more than 2,500 megawatts of renewable energy capacity from solar, wind, and hydroelectric plants. Of that capacity, roughly half comes from wind, while almost 1,000 megawatts comes from small hydroelectric plants. The remaining 240 megawatts comes from solar energy, so it's a small amount. Pennsylvania established its first clean energy target in 2004. Pennsylvania electricity suppliers have kept pace with these goals, but as of 2018, the state only generates roughly 4 to 4.6% of its electricity from renewables. The conclusion of my analysis, this is just a brief portion, is that the United States' dependence on non-renewable fossil fuels for energy has caused catastrophic environmental damage across the nation. We have seen these effects in nature with increased precipitation, increased heat waves, increased sea level, and more. The damage caused by climate change is disproportionately experienced by those who are less fortunate and do not have access to the same resources as others. To avoid the irreversible impacts of climate change, the research shows that we must revamp our society's power source with 100% renewable energy. The United States receives enough sunlight to produce 100 times our current electricity needs and 10 times enough wind to achieve the same outcome. Between wind, solar, hydroelectric, and biomass, the United States has a vast arsenal for renewable energy production at its disposal. So this is my third to last part. This is my recommendations. This is the more the end of the report. My primary stakeholder was Ben Hellerstein, who is the stakeholder that I aligned myself with on the issues of 100% renewable energy legislation. He believes that moving forward, 100% clean renewable energy is 100% possible. The burning of oil, gas, and coal has polluted not only our air, but our water and land for decades. We have the ability to establish healthier communities with more livable futures for our children growing up today. But the path to getting there is paved by transforming the way we consume energy. This is why we must call for a nationwide commitment to 100% renewable energy. While this goal may seem bold, it is one that would force America into a healthier future and is completely within our grasp. So now looking at opportunities for coalition buildings, how can the stakeholders that I've mentioned work together? Looking at the Mass Energy Consumers Alliance and Mass CEC. The Mass Energy Consumers Alliance and Mass CEC have similar messages in the goals of achieving 100% renewable energy. They would be able to pool their resources and align their programs in order to promote additional solar and wind generation in the New England region. Mass Energy Consumers Alliance has multiple programs that incentivize the public to switch to clean renewable energy, such as solar with Mass Energy program. This could be combined with one of Mass CEC's 40 renewable energy technology installation programs to make it easier for individuals to start powering their homes with solar energy. If a coalition like this were to gain more following, it would be able to gear the public towards thinking about renewable energy policy and possibly voting in the direction of 100% renewable energy. Looking at the SCRC and CBAIN, both the SCRC and CBAIN have strong commitments to their solar industry and support a message of getting in front of policymakers to discuss the furthering of solar technology in the New England region. In order to promote renewable energy legislation, the SCRC and CBAIN would be able to align their solar programs and combine their stakeholder groups in order to create a stronger political foundation. Between the two organizations, they should be able to reach a large enough base through public outreach programs to sway a critical mass towards thinking about 100% renewable energy legislation. Looking at NESIA, NESIA is a large enough organization that they would be able to collaborate with any of the above listed organizations in hopes of achieving renewable energy legislation. NESIA, using its building energy programs, would be able to combine with solar organizations like CBAIN and promote the construction of solar systems across the New England region. NESIA could most closely work together with Mass CEC as their programs are most similar. With their combined efforts and resources, they would be able to assist the up-and-coming renewable energy companies in Massachusetts. With renewable energy doing well in Massachusetts, the public would be enticed to vote for legislation that supports renewable energy, such as the 100% Renewable Energy Act. So this is Steve Dodge. He was my main opposing stakeholders in my research for the 100% Renewable Energy Act. It was his opinion that, and I quoted this earlier, that the 100% Renewable Energy Act was a totally unworkable aspirational legislation that could end up being very costly to ratepayers and energy users in the state. Consumers are already paying the highest energy prices in the country, and that this bill would increase prices further, and it could jeopardize the reliability of the region's grid. In order to sway his opinion, I would simply refer him to my research, which heavily suggests all the benefits of switching to renewable energy. Not only are renewables better for the environment, but the data shows that as renewables are increasingly introduced into the system, the price per kilowatt hour drops. I would also point out that the concern of the grid reliability has become a thing of the past, as renewables have become increasingly reliable as development has expanded. A fear of renewables is a fear of progress, and a fear of progress is a fear of a prosperous future. So lastly, we have the action plan. So in Massachusetts, currently in Massachusetts, there are a multitude of outreach programs in order to get the message out about 100% renewable energy. One large factor is the presence of renewable energy in colleges and universities. Many of Massachusetts schools are switching to 100% renewable energy and are hosting informational sessions from leaders in the renewable energy industry. Environment Massachusetts is an environmental group that represents Massachusetts, and they are very proactive on social media and in the public with setting up town meetings and commercials. They're very active on Facebook and Twitter as well, and their own page where they accept donations to fund their efforts in moving the Commonwealth towards 100% renewable energy. Pennsylvania, first and foremost, Pennsylvania must implement similar community outreach programs with speakers at local libraries as well as universities and colleges. College students are typically very progressive and open-minded, are worth swaying their vote. Pennsylvania is a famous energy state with strong energy leaders in the renewable energy sector who could give informational talks at these types of locations. Though it is not common to see television advertisements for an energy bill, this would be a fantastic opportunity to get the message out to the public through TV screens. The ads would highlight the climate benefits of renewable energy as well as the financial benefits and would draw voters in who otherwise would never have thought of renewable energy. Lastly, social media has a substantial effect on reaching a critical mass of people. Pennsylvania's renewable energy companies should be able to generate a renewable energy campaign promoting the use of wind, solar, and other forms of renewable energy to save the environment and money in the state. The campaign would highlight the benefits of how switching to renewables can help those who are disproportionately affected by climate change in the state of Pennsylvania. Through the combination of these efforts, it would be possible to get to 100% renewable energy legislation passed in the state of Pennsylvania. These are my references. So lastly, what I'd like to do is I would like to reflect a little bit on what I've learned. And what I've learned mostly from this, I mean, this was a very complex project for me, but mostly what I pulled away is that 100% renewable energy is possible. It can be done. There are tons of examples of people already doing it successfully. And so standing from the perspective of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania can do anything. So there's no, we're one of the 4 running states. So what I learned is that Pennsylvania has every opportunity to enact 100% renewable energy legislation, and they are finally starting to move towards that. How could my research be used by stakeholders in my area? I mean, the stakeholders, I think I have some pretty comprehensive research, mostly just highlighting the benefits of switching to 100% renewables, pointing out all of the issues with how climate change affects people, and mainly highlighting that main point that climate change disproportionately affects people who are minorities or people who are less fortunate, and that's not fair. So if it's something that we can do something about, then it's something that we should do something about. As far as staying involved with this topic, I'm very up to date with the news. I always pay attention. I'll read articles, but I probably won't be going to any meetings. This was a fun project, but that's about as far as I'll go with it. And but if it ever becomes close to me, I will absolutely do something about it. But anyways, thank you. This was my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was long, and I invite you to leave a comment below, and maybe it'll inspire me to think of something else. So thank you very much.